Hi, Gary French here with Firebase News. We've spent the day here at the Kentucky Truth Summit at a large venue here in Oldham County. We have had an incredible day with a number of different interviews, all kinds of people coming out, from healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, researchers, scientists, business owners, just family members. We've had people that have had a negative reaction to the COVID-19 vaccine, so much more. That's what this show is about. We have gotten so much information. We're excited to be able to share that with you. Stay tuned for this episode. Sitting here with Nikki Holland. And Nikki, as part of this summit that we're here, the key word is Kentucky Truth. And as you and I were talking before we started filming, is that truth is something that's important because a lot of the news media today, and folks, we're not one of them, they silence the truth and they censor people. And on the camera, people will see that you're sitting here with oxygen. They see that you're in the wheelchair right now. I'm just going to ask you like this. Why? What happened?
The truth all relates back to the vaccine.
So what your life right now is a result of being vaccinated to the COVID-19?
Yes,
okay.
It is. Before all this, I was a physical therapist, working full-time, and only had asthma and very functional, running, have 3 kids, doing wonderful. And then after my second COVID vaccine, everything kind of fell apart.
Nikki, did you have any concerns or thoughts about the vaccine before you got that first? Some people around here today are calling it the jab. And
yes.
People with common sense understand what the jab is all about. Did you have any concerns about it before you got the jab?
Unfortunately, I did. And hindsight 2020. But, you know, working in the healthcare field, you feel the pressure from, of course, the government, the social media, and then also the healthcare world. You have to do your part. And if you were to spread COVID to your patients and you didn't have the vaccine, you would be the cause of their death.
You don't want to kill grandma.
Right. And so you kind of have a questioning, and then, or I did, and then I put that aside and I went ahead and did it, and it was one of the biggest mistakes in my life.
Well, Nikki, was part of that pressure? Obviously, it was very subtle, but then there's a lot of it is just out in the open that if you want to keep your job, you will get this vaccine. And then there's the guilt trip.
Right.
We want to protect grandma. We want to protect your patients that you're working with. So was that part of the struggle that you had there, violating your own free will, but also I've got to have a job?
Right. It had not become mandated at that point in my job. We had heard through the pipeline it was coming through Medicare and the job as far as being able to keep it. And later, you know, it did transition to that, but it wasn't at that point. But it was going that direction. You
got the vaccine in 2021, and then you had a booster after that. Is that correct? Oh, no. Just the one. Okay.
No, I had Moderna 1 and 2.
Okay, all right. Now, how long after you had that initial vaccine did you begin to say, wait a minute, something's not normal with me? I
had the first one in January, and it just caused fatigue and muscle soreness in my arm. And then when I had it in January 2021 or February 2021, I had it on a Friday. Within 36 hours, I had nausea, vomiting.
Wow.
I started to have shortness of breath that worsened. And 5 days later, was in the hospital with respiratory failure. And exactly 1 week later, was on the vent for the first time.
I tell you what, I've known a number of people that when they were on ventilator, died. Mm-hmm. It was almost like, well, when they get this far, that's it. Did you or any of your family have that concern? Like, we're about to say goodbye?
It was a scary time. And I was on the ventilator between February and May 5 different times.
Wow.
The last time I ended up with a tray.
I mean, just mentally, how did that affect you?
It was devastating. After the second time I was on the vent, I knew things were cycling and I'd get better for a few days and then it would get worse.
Right.
And after that second time, I mentally was preparing. That night, I knew things were worsening, and I sat there with my phone making videos for my kids.
Wow.
Because I was afraid if I went back on the vent that I wasn't going to come off.
Was there ever any push from them to say, Nikki, no, this can't be, no, this is something else. This is not vaccine related. This is something, you're allergic to peanuts or something. Now, I know that sounds ludicrous, but did they push back with any kind of other possible rationale?
The smaller town hospitals that I started out in, the doctors and the nurses would be like, this is definitely from the vaccine, but it's also new. One of them said, we're all guinea pigs. I can't really tell you that it is for sure because I don't know how to test it, but it appears to be, it's starting out. And then I had other doctors say, yes, it is. And then I have larger hospitals. The larger you go, they more reeled it in and were more cautious about things they said. And at first they would say, well, maybe it's asthma, but then all other systems started to break down past the respiratory.
Well, you had asthma for a long time. You knew what asthma is like.
Right. Yes.
What when you tell people, did you have some people just think you're lying?
Yes.
You're making this up?
I've had several comments. Some say correlation does not equal causation. Coincidence, it was going to happen anyway. Those kind of things. My hard-headedness, coming from Western medicine, I tried to stick with Western medicine, and I had faith in the system that I worked for that would protect me. And I kind of hit a wall. And I do have some great specialists that continue to manage things. But it's here recently that I started connecting with the doctors through this world. And I'm working one-on-one with Dr. Pierre Corey. Yeah. And he has definitely offered up some things that have helped. And
have you had any conversation with Dr. Peter McCullough?
Yes, I've talked with McCullough several times.
He's a rock star in the medical field, isn't he?
He is wonderful. A wonderful guy, too. Yeah. A wonderful guy.
I thought he was taller than he was. But
No. He packs a powerful punch in a short time.
He does. Well, you know what? The more you have a powerful punch and the more you speak the truth, the more the news media and the leftists want to silence you. Why do you think there's such a push from a lot of people in the medical field or the news media or whatever you want to pick to silence you? Now, as you think about that, I need to respond to something you said. You trust Western medicine. And you know what my thought of? This vaccine is not Western medicine. It's voodoo.
Right.
It's like you could have gone to
probably calling it better. Yes.
You could have gone to like an old Tarzan movie, gone to the jungles of Africa and had a voodoo doctor do something, because that's what it seems like.
My perspective of things have definitely changed. My eyes have been opened, and I don't know whether it is politics, money, or pure evil.
I think it's all of those, but I really think it's evil. I really believe that the struggle that we have in our nation today is the same struggle that people have had in the human heart forever. And it's not left or right. It's not white or black in color. It's good versus evil. It's a heaven or hell proposition. And our nation really needs patriots like yourself. I'm so sorry and I hurt with you that you've had to endure this. But patriots like you need to know you do have a platform, and we'll give you a platform on our broadcast because we want people to hear the truth. What has prompted you to be a part of the Kentucky Truth Summit?
I started earlier this year in April, talking with a React 19 group, and they are basically founded by vaccine injured for vaccine injured. And
how many of you, since this has happened, how many of you met that have had an adverse reaction to the vaccine?
I've met hundreds. I've corresponded with thousands.
Wow.
When you lose your job and you lose your purpose, you work your whole life. I worked and, I got my doctorate. I went to PT school, and that's what I invested my whole life and time into. And then you lose it. You lose that purpose of, what you should do. Yeah. And then, there's still a way to help people. There's still a way to see beyond where you're at. And I think by coming to events and trying to share awareness and show them, hey, I'm a real person. I'm not an actress.
Yeah.
I'm not somebody that's, spreading misinformation. This is my personal story.
I think sometimes it feels like what we're going through, pushing back against the governor, pushing back the president, pushing it back against just the leftist ideology. And folks, I really hate to define our nation into that, because I want us all to be Americans. And and there's not multiple races. There's one race. It's called the human race. And unfortunately, our human race is, a lot of people have used people like yourself as a guinea pig. People like yourself is in the line and the vein and the courage of the founding fathers that stood against the British Empire. And it probably seemed and felt like initially that, you know what, I'm spitting into the wind and this is not going to make much of a difference. But I'm telling you, what you're doing right now is making a difference, and it will be an encouragement to other people along the way. Your struggle will be courage to other people, and you will change lives. And I'm sorry that you had to go through all this, but sometimes we have to go through a bad thing in order to realize our purpose in life. We want you to know that my life is better for knowing you today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. All right. We are at the Kentucky Truth Summit 22 here in Oldham County. And you've been watching the show. We've been here most of the day, as a matter of fact, all day long. And we've talked to a variety of people from those in the medical field and healthcare industry. And also we've spoken to victims of the vaccine. We've spoken to family members, their ordeals that they've had. And we've spoken to a UPS pilot and their stand. And we've even spoken to politicians today. It's been an incredible day. And I have the privilege right now of speaking with Dr. Steve LaTulip. Doctor, thank you so much for coming to our show. Glad that you're here.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to be here.
What is, the summit that's going on, people are going to ask this question, and I like this to hear from each different person. What is the Kentucky Truth Summit all about?
Well, it's in the title, I believe. In this day and age, unfortunately, the doctors who actually speak truth in medicine are being heavily censored. We're being canceled. I am unique among them because I was the first medical doctor in the United States to have my license first suspended and then fully revoked and then fined $10,000. And it's actually because of what I said publicly.
And you said publicly about the COVID-19 or what?
Yes. On November 7th, I spoke at a Stop the Steal rally in Salem, Oregon at the Capitol building. I was not intending to do it. It was totally, my wife asked me to go just to support this effort. And I went, and then I was asked to speak. And
what year was that in?
That was in 2020.
Okay.
I just simply said to the people, based on what I was seeing with my patients who were very afraid of everything that was going on, and I said, look, I have treated COVID patients and I had 100% success. So please don't fear this virus because it is very effective, very treatable. And also I mentioned that I and my staff in my office had never once masked. And I was, I believe, the only medical doctor who stayed open in Polk County in Oregon throughout the entire pandemic. So I treated all these COVID patients and I never got sick. My staff never got sick. We had a good cold and flu season protocol that I had used for years, and It worked very well. So there was no harm done whatsoever. And in fact, the Oregon Medical Board, which is extremely corrupt, they had known that I was not masking for over 4 months.
Wow.
And yet they attacked me and accused me of not following Governor Kate Brown's mandates. This was some 4 months later, and not until I spoke publicly and said there is a treatment for COVID. And now looking back, that was my sin, if you will, because I told the public there is a very effective early treatment for COVID, and they knew that for emergency use authorization, they could not have a treatment to be able to authorize.
Why has it been that if a person says hydrochloroquine or ivermectin and all of a sudden they silence you? Why? And they'll try to say, oh, ivermectin, that's for horses. You don't need to use that. Or
right. And the truth is, it's because those have been effective treatments.
Yeah. I'm not a conspiracy guy, but that sure sounds like
it's exactly
we're not going
what
to make any money here.
Exactly right. And yes, I would say it's all about money. It's all about power, and it's all about controlling the population. I would go so far as to say that medicine has been hijacked and is being used currently as a vehicle, literally, to overthrow our government.
I think that's a very good question, Doctor. One of the things that my concern is that when they have people such as yourself who want to speak the truth, other forces are going to want to silence you because of the money aspect. And I think there's a fear involved, because if we get people fearful, then they're just going to sit at home and they're just going to isolate themselves. And then we have other issues, depression, mental illness, children in school being left behind. And so it's a whole domino effect that happens. Out of the Kentucky Truth Seminar and also with the Global COVID Summit, what's the main emphasis? I know this to educate people and to help the truth get out there. So that's the first one. What's the main emphasis in addition to the truth? And what's been some of the benefits of having a summit like this?
Well, I really appreciate you asking that question, because you're right. We are here to speak the truth so that, first of all, people have a clear understanding of what is really happening. And I think that anybody that is going to use their brains and a little common sense, they are going to understand the facts that, this all does make sense, whereas in the past, nothing has made sense.
Right.
What we're being told from every government agency, be it the CDC, the NIH, the fraud Fauci. To be honest with you, these people are simply part of a rogue government faction that we are dealing with. And so the impetus behind telling the truth is not just to let everybody go home happily being filled with knowledge, because knowledge, if not used to accomplish something, is going to mean nothing. You might as well not have heard it. So what we're really trying to do is motivate people so that they can be empowered to make a difference and to change the trajectory of where America is headed, because we are in severe, grave trouble right now.
I agree with that. One of the things that I see on a summit like this should be of great interest, not only to the population that's out here. Well, you think that there would be a lot more coverage by other news medias, and ours is the only news show that is actually out here covering this and is actually being involved. And then part of that is because I'm not afraid. My hope is in Christ Jesus. It's not in what man can do or can't do to me. When YouTube wants to censor my show, that's awesome. It must mean I'm saying something that they don't like.
Absolutely.
Why is there such fear from those who don't agree with your message? And it may be a better way to say, why is there such fear from people who want the jab, who want to be jabbed all the time?
Right. I think that the fear absolutely comes from the agenda that is seeking to control not only the American population, but the entire world. When I am retired Air Force, and I flew heavy aircraft for a number of years. And as I traveled across the globe, we went into countries at times where free republics were actually being challenged. And there were always three ingredients present for that to happen. And number one was fear.
Yeah.
That fear is very strong, very powerful to get control of people. The second thing is confusion. And the third thing is actually violence, or the threat of violence. Wow. And we see that in America right now, and that's what's concerning.
I think that's absolutely profound what you're saying, because if you allow fear to overwhelm you, then you become an open receptacle to propaganda.
Absolutely.
And then the propaganda can fill the void of, or hopefully assuage the fear that you happen to have. Do you see, or have you, is that maybe in Oregon or even in a different place around the United States, fear is overwhelming people?
I think that it is now starting to subside, and that's why we heard things, for example, like monkeypox. They tried to push that on us and generate fear. And guess what? People are actually, I think, getting tired of playing the pandemic game. And monkeypox, all of a sudden, you're not hearing anything about it because they know it's a flop. But they will try something else.
They're already reporting this week, getting ready for the flu season. Every year, it seems like you hear about the flu season, it's from the pharmaceutical commercials, and then the mainstream news media reports the flu season. Better go get vaccinated. I've never been vaccinated for anything.
Right.
Matter of fact, when I went in the Army, I was vaccinated, and I got sick from the vaccination. In Italy, just this week, they said, we already see a 35% increase of the new variant. Are they just going around like a little kid with a wooden spoon banging on the pot of fear?
I believe so. Influenza virus and the coronaviruses and that whole family, the common cold viruses, the flu viruses, they've been with us forever.
Exactly.
And they're going to be with us forever. And quite frankly, that was the least aspect of my medical practice. It's like, okay, cold and flu season, we'll treat these people symptomatically just to treat whatever their ailments were, get them over it. And I had a very effective protocol for that. And so it's like, get over it. They are hyping it up. Absolutely. They are trying to generate fear. Some people will still continue to live in fear, I believe, simply because they don't have the mental capacity to think it through and to actually look for the truth.
What do you think the end game is here? And this could just all be, conjecture, and I understand that. And it's like you and I could talk about this over a cup of coffee, and
sure,
here's what I think is going on. And personally, I think that there are other forces behind. It's the Wizard of Oz, the guy behind the curtain.
Absolutely.
And then when you discover he's behind the curtain, he says, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. What's at play here? It's just conjecture, your thought.
Well, you're almost getting into a discussion on the Bible, on end times. And actually, I mean, when you look at the writings of John in his letters in 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, John is the only writer of the Bible that talks about the word Antichrist. And in the Greek, Antichristos is just a mentality that opposes the Savior Jesus Christ. Yeah. And I believe that this is a battle between good and evil, but it is escalating.
You're right.
And we are headed in that direction. Now, of course, John says that in those times, it was the end times, actually, ever since the church age began on that day of Pentecost.
Exactly.
And John says there have already been many antichrists come, and there will be more, and there will be the Antichrist, the grand finale.
Yeah.
And is it heading toward that? Because everybody's saying, well, we're living in biblical times. Well, we've always lived in biblical times since the creation, really. But I know what they're saying. The truth is that, yes, we are headed for a disaster. And I believe, whether or not people buy into the global agenda, and I think that they are pushing toward that. They are pushing toward a cashless currency, and it's all based on control so that they can. I think
that's the issue right there, the control.
It's a big issue.
Because if you can affect the fear and affect the mindset and get people conditioned
absolutely
to the masking and the vaccine, you will control them much
Definitely
more easily,
so.
During the tribulation as well. You make mention of John, 1 John especially, he says, he was concerned. He says, there were people that were with us, and then they went out from us, and they really weren't with us. They're anti-Christ. They are instead of Christ.
Yes.
And for Paul in 2 Timothy chapter 3 to young Timothy, he gives a great teaching. He says, in the end times,
yes,
here's what you will see. Here's the evidence. And he gives an evidence, and I'm going to make it very modern right here. You're going to see kids rebellious against their parents. You're going to see the rise of anarchy. You're going to see citizens becoming less civil. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 24, when he talks about ethnic groups against ethnic groups, nations against nations.
Absolutely.
And then he gets down in that, back to 2 Timothy chapter 3, he says something. He says, Tim, there are people who are always learning and yet never able to arrive at the knowledge of truth. And I think that we're in part of that day. I'm convinced we are in that day, because the push is to make the government or healthcare our God.
Absolutely. I agree with that. We need to realize, and let's go right to that text, 2 Timothy 3 and verse 12.
Exactly.
And what does that say? It says that if we are not struggling, well, let me just quote it. Yes, and all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. So,
Right.
and I mentioned that today in my talk. I asked people, is there something missing in your life? Because if we are not being persecuted for defending the gospel message and the words of Jesus Christ, because that's what made America great in the first place.
That's true. That's
then,
true.
Then we are failing, and we need to get off our comfortable seats and do something, act.
Jesus says in John, he says, be of good cheer. In this world you will have tribulation, but I have overcome the world. And people always like to take and extrapolate tribulation as the tribulation. He wasn't talking about that. He was talking about you're going to have struggles. You're going to have opposition. You will have persecution.
Yes, and he actually said in that verse, but be of good cheer.
Absolutely.
I have overcome the world. I know the blessings of being faithful to Christ.
Yes.
When we take a beating for such a good cause as being, a servant of Jesus Christ, it is such a privilege, such an honor. And that's why the apostles could take the abuses that they took and rejoice in it, because we know there's something coming.
Well, listen, it's been my great privilege for you to be with here, and I'm just so delighted to meet you. Thanks so much. God bless.
Thank you, Gary. You too.
Thanks for watching this most recent episode. Click below the like button. Provide any comments that you like. Also, we will get back to you as soon as we can after you write to us at P.O. Box 39, Perry Park, Kentucky, 40363. Also, let us know if you like really good coffee, and we'll send that out to you as soon as we possibly can. What's the name of the coffee? Firebase.